We're popping up in Florida with an all-new BizBash experience. Join us February 19th and 20th at the Gaylord Palm Resort and Convention Center in Kissimmee as we co-locate with Connect. Hear from President Barack Obama, Ambassador Capricia Marshall, former Social Secretary Disha Dyer, Disney's former Head of Innovation and Creativity Duncan Wardle, and more. Register now at bizbashlive.com/Florida.
Are you okay, so we're gonna be
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Editor-in-Chief Beth Cormanick.
Hi, Claire. Welcome to GatherGeeks.
Thanks for having me, David. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you're co-hosting today. I think it's we're here for a very special reason, and that we're in the middle of the award season in Los Angeles, and you are our bureau chief for Los Angeles. So this is your beat. So
I am.
Yes. So I wanted you to give us a little sense of what the interview that we're about to hear is about, and also what's going on with the Oscars. Everybody's asking me all the time what's going on, and I figure you're the best source. So let's share this with our listeners.
Absolutely. So just to talk about the interview that you're going to hear, I chatted with Stephanie Edens. She's the Senior Vice President of National Sales for Wolfgang Puck Catering for the past 11 years. She also spent 10 years before that with Patina Restaurant Group, another huge catering company. And she has a background in event production. She's a member of the board of directors for the LA Regional Food Bank. So she's really a heavy hitter on the LA catering scene. And we also discussed the company's catering plans for the upcoming Oscars Governor Ball, which is the official after party. Wolfgang Puck Catering is handling the catering for the 26th consecutive time on February 9th.
Yeah, they don't change their vendors too often, do they?
No. They've had the same producer and designer for 31 years now, Sequoia Productions, and the same florist, and they really are consistent.
Yeah, we've interviewed Cheryl before. She's wonderful.
Yeah, she's incredible. She also does the Emmys official after party, also called the Governor's Ball.
Yeah, there's a lot of Governor's Balls.
Yeah. So twice a year, coming up with these really inventive things for the biggest Hollywood stars.
So tell us about the Governor's Ball, the one for the Oscars, that is.
Yeah. So that is of course, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. That's their official after party. It takes place at the Ray Dolby Ballroom right after the Oscars, which are held in an adjacent theater. So it's typically the first stop of the night for all the big A-listers and the big studio execs. It draws about 1,500 people. It's really a who's who. So speaking of Wolfgang Puck Catering, they always create a really intricate menu for the event. Stephanie is going to talk about this a bit, but up until a few years ago, it was actually a seated dinner. But they realized that guests really wanted to be walking around and mingling and talking to each other and really celebrating the end of award season. So now it's typically a series of small plates, hors d'oeuvres, sushi and dessert stations, and kind of small tables with lots of room to roam. And we had mentioned design before a little bit. Cheryl Chiquetto and her team at Sequoia Productions, they do this really incredible decor and production for the last 31 years. They're probably announcing the theme next week by the time you hear this. So we'll be sure to bring you that news as soon as we have it.
And that's a major moment, the announcement of the theme.
Absolutely. That's a big media preview with all the big news outlets, and I will be there, and I'll be posting a story immediately afterwards. So it's a really big moment. Last year was a really gorgeous homage to global cinema. They had decor that evoked kind of old school movie theater designs. So lots of red and black and gold. So that was really nice. And it's also a ton of florals. The florals always really stand out. They work with Mark's Garden, which is a Sherman Oaks-based company. They handle floral designs for kind of all the big LA award shows, Oscars, the Golden Globes, the Grammys. If you just watched the Golden Globes red carpet in early January, you may have seen these bright yellow Golden Globe statues made of flowers. That's Mark's Garden.
And who is Mark? Tell us about Mark. You know anything?
Yeah, so Mark Held. They've been doing the Governor's Ball for 22 years. They also do a lot of private events. They do a bunch of parties for the Kardashians and for Ellen and Portia and Gwen Stefani and kind of every big name. They're kind of a go-to.
And is Cheryl all part of that team too? Is it all? Do these sort of vendors travel in packs?
No, that tends to change up. I know, like
Okay.
the Kardashian events like to use Mindy Weiss, and so kind of trading around these LA heavy hitters.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The Oscars still has the glamour that's attached to it from old Hollywood, or is it completely different now?
I think it's still very glamorous. I mean, people debate the award show itself and how effective and useful these shows are anymore. But I do think for the celebrities, and at least on the event scene, I think people are really looking to these A-list events to see what they're doing. We posted a story last year about event design trends from award season parties, and it was one of our best performing stories of the entire year. I think people around the country really look to see what these events are doing.
Yeah, I think what people don't realize though is that because it's on the West Coast, they start earlier, so it gives you more time, a bigger canvas where people are not tired, so they're out. It looks like it's later, but it really isn't because they've started so damn early.
Yeah, the red carpet starts I think at 4:30 or so. The show starts at 5:30, and all these parties are starting around 8.
So the stylist, what time does the stylist usually come to the celebrity's place?
Oh, probably 10 a.m. or so.
10 a.m. So they're working for hours getting everyone into shape.
I saw a funny thing for the Golden Globes. Rita Wilson was freaking out around 10 a.m. because her makeup artist hadn't arrived yet. And it felt so early, but it's like, oh, yeah, they need to start getting ready that early.
So they're pampering themselves the way a bride pampers herself for a wedding.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. What are the hot places that people go to that night? What's still big?
After the Governor's Ball, there are a few different really big events around town. I think the buzziest and most exclusive is always the Vanity Fair Oscars party. That's always held at the Wallace Annenberg Center for Performing Arts. And that's a really fun one for celebrities because press is actually generally banned other than the red carpet. So it's really a place where they just totally let loose. In-N-Out burgers are usually served. It's just a really big celebration and dance party. Last year, the New York Times was posting a story debating if it's lost its luster with Graydon Carter no longer being the editor. But judging by last year's guest list and the few photos I saw, I really think it's still a real go-to.
It's the big ticket. A lot of people that don't even go to the Oscars go to that, right?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of celebrities won't even be invited to the Oscars. It's a very limited guest list, and so a lot of people just go to the after parties, which is interesting.
So if you're not a nominee, do those A-listers still go, or do they like to stay home and hide out since they weren't nominated?
No, I think they still go. I think a common thought is the Elton John's AIDS Foundation actually does a viewing party. So a lot of the big people who weren't invited to the actual ceremony tend to go to that because they can still feel like they're at something exclusive and have a nice dinner and watch the show. So that takes over a tent in West Hollywood Park every year for the last 28 years. So it's a viewing party and a dinner, and then it's followed by a live performance. So some of the people who were at the actual award show then come, and that also turns into a big party. Last year, the Killers performed. This year, it's going to be English singer-songwriter Sam Fender, and Elton typically gets on the piano and does a couple songs. But it doubles as an AIDS research fundraiser. So they always have a really successful auction. Last year raised $6.3 million in one night. It's pretty amazing.
I guess this year Elton will go to the Oscars.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Last year he and the actor who played him in the movie did this big surprise performance at the party. But this year I think they're going to be a little busy, so they'll come afterwards.
Yeah. So what are some of the big design trends that you're seeing?
Yeah. So, each party is really distinct looking. I think people really try to be creative and reinvent the wheel every year. I do think each year tends to have some kind of similar trends. I know last award season I saw a lot of really intricate ceiling decor. The Emmys after party, for example, had this amazing 28,000 individual LED lights suspended from the ceiling. Also last year I saw a lot of really bright patterns and dark florals. And actually a lot of residential inspired decor with kind of plush couches and bookshelves. And that was a bit unexpected and had a bit of a more cozy feel than I expected for award season. And what I've seen so far from Emmys and Golden Globes is more neutrals, a kind of elegant upscale feel. And of course, lots of gold, but more simple color palettes, but also really lush florals. I just covered the SAG Awards After Party, which is designed every year by Tony Schubert of Event 11, another amazing LA heavy hitter designer. And that had a really gorgeous cherry blossom forest theme. So I think all the designers really work to change it up every year, which is fun to watch.
So floral is, I know floral is never out, but sometimes people like want to go to other things. But it sounds like floral is back with a vengeance.
Yeah, I think every award season party I go to is a lot of florals. I think it's kind of a go-to. It's a great photo backdrop because a million photos are being taken at these things. So definitely very floral heavy.
And I think I left out that there's also another great viewing party that Mercedes-Benz hosts. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I typically attend that one. So that is always designed by Sterling Social. And I think that's kind of a place for a lot of more kind of studio execs and things like that to attend. And it's fun to see that they still don't skimp on the decor, even if it's a viewing party that doesn't draw a ton of A-list celebrities.
Are these the B-list celebrities?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
and the business guys.
Yeah, the business guys. But they always have really fun, glamorous photo booths and a fun station to kind of vote on who you think will be the best picture winner. Just some really creative stuff, and again, very design heavy and floral heavy.
And so, we've been covering the Oscars for now 20 years with BizBash.
Yeah.
What have you seen? How has it changed over the years from our coverage and from history and all of the sort of the great milestone moments that we've captured?
Yeah. So going way back in history, I read this interesting article about the history of the Oscars just this morning. The first ceremony in 1929 only gave out 15 awards, had 270 people attend, and it was a sit-down dinner. And they used to print the winners in the newspaper the next day because it wasn't televised until the 50s. So now, of course, there's a way bigger guest list. There's no meal served during the ceremony. That's kind of all saved for the after parties. And a big thing now for the Oscars is having no host. They did that last year. They debuted it, and it actually got really great buzz and higher ratings.
Why do you think that? What do you think that is? Is there just too much judgment and too many people sort of decide whether they like the host or not and watch it because of that?
I mean, you look at the Golden Globes this year with Ricky Gervais, and he had a lot of off-color jokes, and he caused a lot of controversy, and people were not thrilled with it. And I think so. Even when it's not offensive, it can still get kind of monotonous for the monologues, I think. And by the time the Oscars come around, there have been so many of these award shows that people are just bored. And I think they like the idea of reinventing the wheel. I think the presenters are maybe trying a little harder to be funny and make memorable moments.
I guess it's the we also have such a little small attention span in today's world. 15 seconds is a long time.
And I know they're really making an effort to keep the show under 3 hours.
Under 3,
which sounds surprisingly hard to do, I guess. But
I guess so.
So I think no host helps with that.
Great. They're held earlier this year than before, right? Is it the time frame? Has the time frame made a big difference in terms of award season? Everything's sort of clumped together now.
Yeah, it's funny. We spoke to some event planners last year, and they were kind of panicking about this. So the Oscars are typically held in late February, and this year they moved up to February 9th. And because those kind of mark the end of award season, everybody caused this big ripple. Everybody had to move stuff. I know the Grammys moved a couple weeks earlier. The SAG Awards moved earlier. So it's really been confusing for voters and movie timelines and things like that. But it's also really stretched some of these vendors who work on multiple award season events.
So who is the leader of the pack, though? Is it they're watching when the Oscars will be, and then everyone's reacting to the Oscars?
Yep, that seems to be what it is. I think nobody wants to go after the Oscars because I think by that point everybody's pretty like, okay, this is over. That was the biggie. Whoever wins Best Picture there, that's what it is. Yeah, everybody's been kind of scrambling to move stuff earlier. There were the SAG Awards up until a few months ago were supposed to be the same night as the Grammys, and then those moved a week earlier. So it's been a lot of kind of scrambling behind.
I guess they really do need our master planner calendar.
Absolutely. Good plug.
Yes, that's fantastic. So you also, going back to catering, you're talking about this whole idea of plant-based trend, the plant-based trend, and you really pointed that out. We had in our pre-conversation, you said we have to really mention this.
Yeah. So kind of a surprise this year, the Golden Globes, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the SAG Awards all kind of last minute decided to serve entirely plant-based menus. I think it started with the Globes, which were on January 6th. It's funny, they had a full media preview of the menu in December, and the menu did include meat and fish. And then a few days before the event, they announced they were going totally vegan. And the goal was to draw attention to climate change. And the charge was rumored to be led by Joaquin Phoenix, who won the Best Actor Globe this year and is a big environmentalist. So I think he's kind of been behind it, and the other award shows have been falling in place behind the Golden Globes.
So that brings us right to the interview with Wolfgang Puck.
Yeah, I spoke to Stephanie late last year, so that was before all of these plant-based conversations happened. So it kind of remains to be seen if they end up taking a similar approach. I know their company already does have a lot of vegan options, and they've always had them, but I am curious to see if they kind of ramp it up this year. But for now, Stephanie did tell me that their main goal was to create a more approachable, playful experience than possibly they've had in years past. She said they really want to play off the upscale design of the room to kind of contrast that and to celebrate the end of award season. She also do something fun. I think I'd mentioned before at the Vanity Fair party, people tend to eat In-N-Out burgers, which is, of course, the California burger chain. So they wanted to bring in a burger experience this year to the governor's ball, kind of play off that playful idea. So we'll see if that ends up being Impossible or Beyond Burgers to keep with the plant-based trends. I know I'm seeing those meat-free options pop up at almost every LA event these days, Impossible sliders and things like that.
Are then people going to In-N-Out Burger on Santa Monica afterwards and deciding to have a little
maybe.
meat?
Yeah, they'll eat their Impossible burgers at the events and then they'll get to eat. Yeah, so Stephanie also discussed kind of beyond the Oscars. She discussed the company's approach to other large-scale events, plus the catering trend she's most excited about these days, and some other insights into how Wolfgang Puck does their business.
Since the Oscars and the award season has impact around the world, is the F&B sort of when they do something at the governor's ball or Oscar after parties, and we actually cover things, I guess it does translate around the world because people look at it and say, oh my God, I'm going to try that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's been such big news that the Golden Globes and all these other shows have gone plant-based that I think we're going to see events around the country following suit. Well,
we went plant-based at our trade show not the year before last, and we had some mixed reaction to it, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were pioneering.
Yeah. I do think the options are getting better these days, especially with kind of all these plant-based options that kind of imitate meat, but are actually very good. Yeah,
the burgers, I've had those Beyond Burgers and things like that, and they do taste Impossible Burgers. They taste great.
Yeah, they're delicious.
However, they are full of carbs. Anybody on the keto diet will cannot eat them.
Yeah, I read they're not actually healthier.
Yeah. So let's listen to the interview and we'll discuss it afterwards.
So I'm here with Stephanie Edens, the Senior Vice President of National Sales for Wolfgang Puck Catering. Welcome to GatherGeeks, Stephanie. How are you?
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great. So we're going to chat all about the company's catering approach, the biggest trends you're seeing, and of course, get a little sneak peek of the menu for the official Oscars after party. But before we dive into all of that, I'd love to learn a bit more about you. I know you've been in the event catering business for quite a long time.
I have, indeed.
So what's your background?
The background goes back quite a few years, but I've always had a little bit of a bouncing back and forth between event production and the catering side of it. So I've been with Wolfgang Puck Catering now for 10 years. Previous to that, I actually owned my own corporate event planning firm.
Okay.
And prior to that was with another group, very similar role as what I have with Wolfgang Puck. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, event production. So a little bit of a bouncing back and forth between the two. So like being able to be involved in both sides of that.
And I know you do some work with the LA Regional Food Bank.
I do. I serve on their board of directors. I sit on their philanthropy and executive committees. I joined that board 7 years ago now, I believe. Just had always been an organization that I supported, and being that I make my living by feeding people and making them happy, it seemed like the proper response to help those that were in need.
That's great. That's great. So kind of the fun thing coming up, I'm sure it's all fun for you, but the Oscars are coming up in February.
And they are.
And you guys every year do the official Governor's Ball After Party. This is the 26th year?
It is.
Great. Are there any kind of sneak peeks you can give us about the menu?
Well, funny you should ask. So we haven't done our tasting yet for this year.
Yeah.
But I can tell you a little bit about some of the conversation that's been going on.
Yeah.
So the Governor's Ball, we turned it upside down about 6 years ago. So it was a traditional seated banquet dinner. And as you can imagine, these people are coming in after a really, really long day, really hungry, potentially want to socialize and network, potentially just want to get out of there if they didn't win. And so we just looked and said that format's not working anymore. So we changed the whole ball to a strolling event for the most part.
Okay.
So it's all a series of hors d'oeuvres and small plates. We do a dessert station and a sushi station. And that format just worked so much better because people could come and go, they could much more easily navigate the room, see who they needed to, and that sort of thing. And so over the years with that, we keep looking at how we can make that better and different. Obviously in the last few years, the dietary requirements have become a larger issue, so making sure we've got that balance between vegan and dairy-free and nut-free and all that good stuff. But this year I think we're going to get a little bit more fun even.
Exciting.
Yeah.
And I know it kind of ends award season, so I think people are kind of ready to let loose.
Yeah.
They're done dieting temporarily. And
Absolutely, hopefully.
Yeah. That's great. And of course, that's not the only large-scale event you work on, obviously. What are some other big annual highlights of the year to you?
Yeah, we've been working with Adobe now for 9 years, and they hold an annual conference, and we do their closing party for that. And over the years, when we started with them, it was 3,500 people. This last year, it was 11,000.
Wow.
So it really over time has grown. Our client is phenomenal, and she challenges us all the time not to do anything normal or standard. So the menus we've created there are created with a lot of her ideas that come to the table, and then we need to figure out how to make them actually be executable. But the past year in 2018, the dessert theme was gummy bears.
Ooh.
So she had an artist in New York create a 4-foot-tall gummy bear made from gummy bears as a centerpiece to the whole thing. And then we took gummy bears and the colorfulness of gummy bears into all the desserts. So that was really fun. I mean, for a really, really interactive and exciting look to that sort of thing. But the rest of the menu also is developed. There's chef action stations. We do things like bao buns, and we do things like pupusas we did last year, which were really, really fun. So trying to get some of that international depth to it as well, because it is an international audience, and really different. We had one year we had whole pigs that were carved at the stations, so she does like us to reach beyond comfort zone for sure, but also to play with a lot of really fun ideas.
Yeah, and that's another reception style.
Reception style, yeah. Stations, reception style, yep. They all come at once, they all get hungry, and then there's usually some sort of headliner performance, so we have to get them fed quickly.
Very cool. Yeah. I'm always, as you touched on, I'm always struck by the creativity of a Wolfgang Puck Catering event. I'm always excited when I get to go to one.
Thank you.
So how do you cater these large events without sacrificing creativity and quality?
Yeah, I mean, quality is at the root of our existence, right? I mean, Wolfgang's known for two things, quality and hospitality. So bringing those two together for sure. So we look and we play around with things a lot in terms of making sure that it will be executable for the larger groups and that sort of thing. And then we also take things and sort of modify them too. So it may be something as simple as pasta, which everybody loves, but how do you translate that into a presentation or to giving people more options of what it may be that make that really work through with the process of it. But it's a delicate balance, most definitely. And some things, I'm not going to say everything works every single time. Sometimes we're like, oh, that didn't quite turn out the way it's supposed to. But you live and learn through that process.
Yeah. And are the dishes you serve much different when it's for a seated, smaller event?
They can be. They can be much more intricate, I would say. It's sort of the number of steps that goes into each dish really allows you to determine whether it's going to work for 20 people or it's going to work for 2,000 people. So it's a little bit of a time factor and game in all of that. So it can be different, and they can be quite similar sometimes too.
And how many offices do you guys have around the country? I know you just expanded to San Francisco.
Yeah, we San Francisco, and we expanded into Houston last year as well.
Oh, great.
So we're now in 8 major markets across the U.S.
Don't forget to register for BizBash Live Florida, the pop-up. Join fellow event pros February 19th and 20th in Kissimmee for this all-new experience. It won't be the same without you. Secure your spot today at bizbashlive.com/Florida.
And I know your team always talks about delivering a restaurant-style experience, even at large events. What does that mean to you?
I think it means a couple different things. It comes back to the quality. I can't say that enough. It definitely comes back to that. But I think now also, as events have evolved and as people are looking for those opportunities not to sit at a round table all night long and be stuck in conversation and be served X meal and that's what you're going to have. So we found, I was just on the phone with my team last week, lots and lots of family style requests for seated dinners. So they still need to have the seated format for programming or whatever it may be, but they don't want that. Here's your salad, and here's your entree, here's your dessert. Maybe there's a few alternatives, but that's about it. So finding that portion of it, I think, really creates more of a restaurant-style experience. Also, just when we look at our events that are much more mix and mingle type of thing, there's lots of options for people. You can top your ramen bar with whatever you may want. So I think that equates a bit to, as you order off a menu, you walk in, you get what you want. So I think variety is a lot of it. And then the quality of the experience too. We don't hotbox things. We cook everything a la minute. Sometimes it takes us a little more space and equipment, but we definitely know that shows at the end result of a better product.
Yeah, definitely. And what are some trends you're seeing in event catering right now?
Yeah, there's some fun things going on. We're seeing a lot of sort of a more global approach to food. So previously, if you had Asian and Latin cuisine represented on a menu, that was global. But now we're digging into some of these geographic areas and culinary adventures, so to speak, that are really, really interesting. Peruvian foods coming around, Mongolian food, Taiwanese, as opposed to just Taiwanese. So those have been fun to play with too. And again, you sort of take the flavors of that culture, and you do have to make them a little bit more accessible for the American palate at times. You can, we take it as authentic as we can, and then we take it and make it modified a little bit. So, and also something that looks approachable to people too. Nobody wants to look at something and not eat it, because you eat with your eyes first, for sure. So that's one. Sort of this mix and mingle. I mean, with the Oscars 6 years ago, really, I think, put this on the map in terms of how you can serve a large formal audience with this type of a format too. Zero proof cocktails, those are really fun. So there's actually I don't know if you call them distillery if they're not actually have alcohol in them, but they're creating beverages that taste like vodka and taste like gin, but have no alcohol in them. So it's not even mocktails. It's more than that. So, and then there's all these great syrups and tinctures, and throw some herbs in there and whatnot, and you have something that's pretty exciting. So I think that's going to grow in a trend as well. Yeah. And really fun to play with by all means.
And I think that ties into the ideas of dietary restrictions and making everybody feel just as important.
Yeah,
having options for everybody.
Exactly. So, I think mocktails previously were kind of these very, very sweet, sticky drinks that, maybe had the umbrella in it, so you felt like you were having your cocktail. But I don't know if they are necessarily, something different. They were just a modification of a cocktail, where this one seems to be like it's going on a path of something a little bit different, for sure. And then food waste and food recovery are big ones too. People really want to know, especially when doing the larger scale events. We have a zero waste program that we're working towards. We're certainly not there by any means, but we're definitely working towards that. And then we partner in all the cities we work with agencies that can help get the food that's left over from an event to those in need in a timely manner.
That's great. And how are you dealing with other than the mocktails, other dietary restrictions?
Yeah, they are prevalent for sure. For sure. We look at, when we do a seated meal, that alternative to the entree or the salad is free of everything. So we'll make it gluten-free, nut-free, dairy-free, everything that we can, and still make it delicious, but try to accommodate that sort of thing. I think also when we're building out our stations, we're looking for that variety. So even when we're writing our initial proposals and whatnot, we're making sure that those categories will be covered. So when people do go back and say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was going to have so many people that are gluten-free, we got that covered. We have this here, we have that here. So it's a top of mind, really, in terms of menu planning. It's a little different. It used to be, did you want beef or chicken? And that was the only thing you really thought about. Now you're thinking about all the components, and you're thinking of the people that are going to come in, because they're going to come in with a lot of dietary restrictions, especially if it's a corporate group or meeting or something like that. They collect that information, and they want you to hold it. So we do signage on all of our buffets as well. The staff are all informed as to what the ingredients are and how, that may or may not affect somebody. But it's become the forefront for sure, and definitely the norm.
Yeah. And I think a lot more registration processes are starting to ask for that too, which I imagine is very helpful for your team.
And overwhelming sometimes. It's not just, it's I can't eat asparagus. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I've heard the advice kind of rank it on a registration, saying what's absolutely necessary, what's a preference.
That's a good one. I like that. That's great.
Kind of break it down as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask a fun question. What's your favorite dish that Wolfgang Puck Catering makes? Put you on the spot.
Wow. Oh, that's a tough one. Well, I will never turn down a spicy tuna cone in my life. So that's our tuna tartare and the hand-rolled cone with a little tobacco on top. And that one I could eat all day long. So it's a classic. It definitely is. By all means, before I started with Wolfgang Puck, I was actually a client with my event production company. So when I started, I said, I'm not going to sell a tuna cone or a mini cheeseburger. Those are just so, and the first proposals I put out, the clients are like, where are the tuna cones and the mini burgers? So you're stuck with them because they're just that good.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And we're recording this right before Thanksgiving. Are you a big cook? Are you going to cook?
Well, it turns out I learned quite a few years ago when I started working with what I'll call real chefs that I am not. At one point in my life, I thought of going to culinary school and quickly realized I didn't have the palate or the talent that the chefs that I was working with are. So but Thanksgiving I can pull off. So we're heading to the in-laws, and I am doing a few side dishes. So my husband allows me. My husband's a chef too, so that also keeps me out of the kitchen. So he'll come in and doctor it and get in my way. But for the things like traditional things I can do. Anything beyond that, not so much anymore. But I love to eat it all.
So you eat well at home. He's a chef. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Stephanie. This was great to hear your expertise, and we look forward to having you back soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So thanks for that, Stephanie. We're back in our studio now. I really liked hearing how seriously Wolfgang Puck Catering is taking dietary restrictions, making sure all the signage is clear of the ingredients, making sure the staff is super informed for any questions. I know personally my boyfriend keeps kosher, and he doesn't drink, and he really appreciates going to an event where he doesn't feel like an outsider, where there's plenty of meat-free food options and creative mocktails and other zero-proof things that make him feel like he's a part of the experience. And that's really been a change I see over the last year or two. I don't know if that's kind of an LA thing or if you're seeing more of that.
You've gone totally LA. 3 years in LA, this is what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that in New York, or is that totally LA?
I think we're seeing that here too. We're seeing a lot of mocktails. We're seeing almost the same things are going back and forth. However, I don't think it's the majority. I still think a lot of the caterers and people are serving main meals with the plant-based as an alternative option as opposed to the main option.
Yeah, I think it's evolving every year, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, we're going to watch the Oscars very carefully this year and see how all of these trends, how they play out based on your predictions and things like that tonight. And we'll talk further about it. So Claire, what else is going on at BizBash?
Yeah, so if you're still in a catering and award show mood, you're not sick of this topic yet. Last week, I took an in-depth look at catering for the Grammys this year, both the award show itself and the Recording Academy's official after party. So you can find that on bizbash.com now. Lots of delicious looking photos. And early this week, keep an eye on our wrap up of all the biggest Grammys parties. Grammys, of course, just happened this past Sunday. So that's where it'll be chock full of some really gorgeous design inspiration. I do think the Grammys parties tend to be a bit more funky and playful, but still very stylish and inspiring.
That music crowd's much more wild than the stars of the movies.
For sure. So there should be some really cool ideas coming out of that, and look for that on BizBash.com early this week. And of course, as soon as there was more news about the Oscars Governor Ball, I will bring that to you right away, both in our weekly LA news column and in our BizBash Daily newsletter.
Great. Well, this is fantastic, Claire. But of course, before we go, we want to thank you for being such an integral part of our editorial team and bringing us this interview and keeping us all honest on all of the other aspects of the editorial side of our podcast. Rebecca Pappas for distributing it to the world. And of course, Dave Nelson, our producer, who puts it all together. So with that said, we always end the show by saying, gather on.
Gather on. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Claire.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter @GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on.